Well, thank you. Thank you, Senator Harkin, for having me. And thanks to everyone in this room for the work that you do in diversity and inclusion in every span, in every institution, in every organization. I want to first also thank my colleague, Nora Velli. Nora, stand up. Many of you might know Nora. She is my confidant. I am so proud to be working with her, and she is one of the spearheaded, passionate leaders around diversity and inclusion at Merck. I also, and I don't think she's here, but I stand on the accomplishments and the work of my colleague and my mentor, Deb Daggett. She was the previous Chief Diversity Officer at Merck, and I learned a lot from her as an HR leader within the organization while she was in her tenure as Chief Diversity Officer. I want to talk a little bit, and I think, yeah, there we go. I want to talk a little bit about foundationally before I get into the specifics around what we are trying to do, and I say trying because it is a journey. It's a journey from the standpoint of we're not there yet, and I don't want to give the impression that Merck is at utopian stages. We are not at utopian stages, but we learn every day. We learn from our successes. We learn from our mistakes, and we still continue to grow in this area. But foundationally, our commitment as a company to diversity and inclusion, we want to make sure that we're affecting the mind, the heart, and the body. It's really important for us as a health pharmaceutical organization that we understand the importance of inclusion of our diverse employee population and, very importantly, our diverse patient population. It's not just abstract concepts, and this is what I tell our leaders every day. This isn't a feel-good initiative. This is a business imperative. And I help them to understand why it's important, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I have a team, a small team, within the Global Diversity and Inclusion Center of Excellence. And we don't do all this work by ourselves. We can't do it all by ourselves. We have 4 what I call my diversity ambassador teams that were chartered 4 years ago when I first stepped into the Chief Diversity Officer role at Merck. The first group is our Employee Business Resource Group's Executive Leadership Council. And that is our 10 global leaders of our EBRGs come together as a leadership team in providing insights, in helping us as an organization to grow, and bringing the voice of their 10 constituency groups and their members to our forum, to those meetings, to help us to grow as an organization. The Global Diversity and Inclusion Business Consortium is comprised of business leaders who, through their day jobs, they have to do it through a lens of diversity and inclusion. For example, our global supplier diversity leader, our corporate responsibility representative, our marketing leaders, our clinical operations leaders, because they unsolicited called me when I first got in the job 4 years ago, and they said, you know, Celeste, I'm really struggling in the role that I do because I just need someone to understand the importance of having a diverse, and fill in the blank, employee base, diverse patients through our clinical trials, diverse suppliers that we're partnering with. And so we formed the Business Consortium to bring those leaders together, because while they had different functional areas, the general theme across it was diversity and inclusion. And so instead of everyone pushing that ball up the hill by themselves, we came together and said, let's push the ball together. And at some point, I firmly believe that that hill will not be there anymore if we keep plugging at it. The GD&I extended HR leadership team is comprised of representatives from my peers on the HR leadership team, each of their organizations, because if we don't get it right in human resources as HR practitioners and leaders with what we offer around talent management, around talent acquisition, around learning and development, around compensation and benefits, around employment legal, if we don't get it right before it hits our employee base, then we have a problem. And so this team basically looks at our HR, our people, practices, policies, and procedures, so we do it through a lens of diversity and inclusion before it hits our employee base. And then lastly, and this is where I want to talk a little bit more about our Disability Inclusion Strategy Council. And when I talk about the 4 diversity ambassador teams, people sometimes ask me, well, I get the other 3, well, why do you have something specifically on disability inclusion? When I first stepped into this role, Nora and some of my team members pulled me aside and talked about the work that they had been doing in disability inclusion, but it was the ultimate ball pushing up a huge mountain. And so we talked about, well, what are some of the challenges that we face and what are some of the things that you think we should do? And one of the first things that we did was an assessment of our organization. And we brought in someone to help us to do that, to look at every aspect of the organization, our facilities, our IT systems, our culture, and let us know, did it create an environment of inclusion? And I told Nora, I said, I want to know the ugly truth. Because if we don't really understand and have that candid conversation around what isn't working, what we're doing well, but very importantly, what isn't working, then we're never going to get better. And so we did the assessment, and we had the conversation, and we brought together, for the first time in a long time, an integrated group of different disciplines across Merck to talk about where our gaps were. So our facilities management leader, employment legal, learning and development, compensation and benefits, health and well-being, corporate responsibility, IT, compliance, all those different groups coming together. And the first meeting, I have to say, and Nora chairs the Disability Inclusion Strategy Council. The first meeting, it was very interesting walking in the room and them being in a room together. I was watching some of their faces and they were like, well, why are they here? Why are they here? They thought maybe, the facilities leader probably thought, well, it's all going to be facilities people. And the IT people thought, well, it's, the GD&I people talking to us, all the IT people. But when they walked in and saw that it was different disciplines, it became a little bit interesting and intriguing. But we wanted to create a 5-year strategy, an integrated 5-year strategy, because we can't just do it because we need access. We can't just do it because we're looking at talent acquisition or benefits. We have to have an integrated strategy for how we are moving this organization forward. And I tell all of my colleagues, this is about change management. Organizational change. And if we don't apply the principles of organizational change, and in this case, disability inclusion, we're not going to get very far. And there is methodology. The first is you have to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at. And once you understand that, then you can see how far the gap is and then create strategies for how you close the gaps. And we all need to work together because we all needed to be singing off the same page. So when we went and asked for additional dollars, it wasn't just the facilities leader or just the IT leader or just the compliance leader, but we had an intelligent business case for why we needed to do this. So we focused on culture and leadership, enterprise-wide access. Merck is in 140 different countries. And this was not a small task of doing this assessment. And frankly, it wasn't easy for our leaders to hear either. You know, nobody wants to hear that their child is ugly. And so we wanted to make sure that the leaders were hearing what it was that they needed to work on.